if you have demons chasing you, it's more likely that you're going to push to the outside limits of extreme fitness. And there's something about the pain and self-torture that somehow makes sense to me. If you have demons chasing you and you go into a fitness thing where you're torturing yourself, that kind of makes sense. It's almost like you're choosing a physical pain that you're in control of instead of an emotional, psychological pain that you're definitely not in control of.
All the way from Minneapolis to Washington, D.C., we now bring you Enter the Freud.
Warning, this is for entertainment purposes only. It is no way medical advice. Listen at your own risk.
All right, so we did a Spartan race this past weekend, and now we got to figure out why the fuck we did that. Doesn't it seem like there's a explosion of like extreme fitness over the last 10 years? Like everyone's got some Spartan race or Tough Mudder or ultra marathon. Or I was talking about the Spartan race to someone yesterday, and they were saying they knew a guy who ran as far as he could for 24 hours straight. He just ran for 24 hours nonstop. So there's just like this like movement of extreme fitness, right, that has like emerged, I think, recently.
Yeah. There's a couple hardcores that have been doing it for a while, but it's super recent. Certainly within the past 20 years.
Yeah. And so it's like the question naturally arises for us psychologists. I mean, you and me, we go and do the Spartan race, but then as psychologists, we have to be like, why the hell do we do that to ourselves? Because there's something on after you were looking at your Fitbit, it was like your heart rate, you averaged like 160 something beats a minute, averaged over like 50 minutes, which is just like insane. That's just like insane levels of pain and abuse to subject yourself to.
Right.
A friend of mine who's a big fitness guru, I told him that. He's like, that's crazy. He's like, because like the maximum safe heart rate is supposed to, I forget what it was, but like 220 minus your age. So you were like nearing the maximum safe heart rate, and you sustained that on average for 50 minutes.
Yeah, with it peaking at 183.
Right. Okay, so that's like pushing the edge of what you're capable of and what's safe. And you did so well. Porn finished 5th out of 866, and so to finish that high, you have to push yourself to the edge of intense pain and like pushing what the body can do. And I was doing it. I did well too, but not as well as porn. And I was like in extreme pain so often. And then now that we're sitting here in our psychology costumes, we got to ask, why the fuck do we do that? And why do humans do that? And why has there been an explosion of these crazy extreme fitness things over the last 10 years? You know, that seems like this question we got to confront.
Yeah, that you know what's really unbelievable is when I look at how far you and I went, because when we first started running, we were actually just talking while we ran, which is like considered absolutely unprofessional, and like that is not how real racers go, apparently. Because we were just like, wow, this is a lot harder than we thought. And just
Totally.
like, hey, look at these guys passing us. Shit, well, whatever, you know. And like those big lumbering, like tattooed, muscly guys, I was like, shit, we're so in trouble. And then it was so strange. Like within a mile down the road, pretty soon those dudes are bent over at the waist and then lying on the ground by the obstacles as they just like fall off. And it's like so strange to watch. And so there's this dude in my gym who's literally looks like one of those like the original sprinters before Usain Bolt. Like they're just so ridiculously jacked up and down, right? He absolutely, I should ask him what his career was before this, because it's unfucking, his stature is phenomenal. Yeah. And I told him about this race and how scary everyone looked when we got there. And then as we started just like running and jumping over their corpses by the middle of the race, and just like boom, the monkey bars, and they're just like all just like cascading off of them as you just cruise past. And he's
and
like,
when we were leaping over their corpses, it begs the question of, you know, because I felt like a corpse, but I just kept running.
Yeah.
And so the guy who's laying down or hunched over at the waist, I felt like that. I wanted to do that, but I just forced myself to not do it and just subjected myself to more pain. And it kind of brings up the question is the difference between me leaping over the guy's corpse or the guy laying on the ground, is it a psychological one or a physical one? It might just be a psychological, because some of them, like you say, like remember at the very beginning we were running and there was this tall, thin, super muscular guy with dreads who his body looked way better than yours and mine, and we quickly passed him, and then I saw him finish much later than us, and so his physical ability looked much better, and so it could just be his ability to push through pain was lower. And if that's the case, then the key thing is psychological, not physical.
Right. It's definitely both. And the psychological component may be the biggest element that none of us could have anticipated.
Right. And okay, so if that's true, that it probably fits into this question I'm asking of why do we do that? And I think I've been thinking about this and I don't know the answer, but here's the couple of interesting ideas I have. Is one somewhat obvious one is that humans evolved over millions of years in extremely difficult circumstances, and now we've reached this place where our lives are super luxe and easy, and that somehow, since we evolved for extreme distress and hardship, we actually do better when we're under hardship. And when we get soft and lazy, like a depression or an angst or a loss of meaning malaise thing happens, and then when we go and put ourselves under stress, somehow it is like a corrective, healing, balancing thing to our sense.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like animals need to be under extreme physical distress, and when we're not, like we aren't anymore in America in the 21st century, then we go and seek it out like artificially.
Yeah, but so if we did truly seek out that pushing yourself beyond yourself, well, 99% of the population who just ended up lying on the ground in this 5K that we did, like their expectation of themselves is so low. It's remarkable, because in all seriousness, Dave, that was like maybe 50% of my effort. Like I could double that without a doubt, and then I would die. Like I could absolutely double the amount of strain that I put out. But like,
and then that makes me think, and I don't know, but I almost want to use the difference between you and me that we could examine, because I could, in theory, I could double the amount of effort, but I wouldn't, and I won't, because it just seems like I could also take a knife and stab it into my shoulder if I wanted.
Yeah.
But I won't do that. And to subject I feel like I subjected myself to a lot of pain in that Spartan race. Not as much as you did to yourself, but a lot. And I could subject myself, and I probably will, just for the experiment of it, to more. But I don't think that I want to or will subject myself to the degree that you want to and will.
well, so I just know something about myself through various experiences in the past.
One variable that pops to mind is that your childhood was extremely traumatic, and my childhood compared to yours was super fucking easy. I mean, nobody's is. Mine had various emotional wounds and shit, but yours is on the bell curve. Yours is pretty fucking far out on the trauma and pain and battle of life, and so maybe maybe now you're more likely to go find new fights, whether it's that surfing thing you're talking about or whether it's really pushing yourself to an extreme level in the Spartan race.
Yeah, I literally have no idea, right? Like I think you're absolutely onto something, because we might look at, then there's plenty of people who grew up right next to me, and you look at them today, they don't have this. They were right there with me in the Himalayas, going through the same amount of this like fight to live experience, and today they're just like soft, avoidant of anything scary.
Yeah.
Right? They have become the exact opposite. Seriously, anything traumatic or scary, oh, get that away from me. I don't know what my problem is.
Remember and when we were shooting the video in Hollywood, you were talking about when you're flying out here that this race became a very important thing in your consciousness about symbolizing like where you were at in life.
Yeah.
So that's a key to why people do this, and you can repeat kind of what you said, but it's basically like humans are looking for the next mountain to climb, and if they climb it, it will make them feel like they've arrived somewhere and their life has meaning.
Because look, flying out here, I started to have a really bad experience of acknowledging that it's actually happening to me right now. And I didn't know it. I didn't know it. That like, I was like, oh, I just want to succeed and become a doctor. And then as a doctor, I need to be good enough doctor. And then I was like,
and also the Spartan race you were doing the Spartan race to kind of like be a mountain climb.
The Spartan race became that. And I never wanted to do the fucking race, but you somehow talked me into this shit. Yeah. But then it's like that, the Spartan race really pointed out like, fuck this race. Fuck this stupid thing that it's like manufactured to somehow deliver this thing to us. And I'm like, it's not going to work. The thing that's coming for me is so big because it's like, oh, I had to overcome so much shit to become this doctor, right? I had to become like, oh, you're illiterate. Okay, become literate. You have all these problems. Okay, overcome those problems. Oh, then you're going to do this thing. And then I realized, oh my God, I've finished the whole thing. Yeah. My project is completely done. Yeah. I've made it as far as I can as a psychologist. And I'm like, ugh. I either have to now like turn it into a business for business sake. Yeah. Because as a craft, I think I've done it. I've made it as far as it goes. Yeah. Any further is just like delusional. Yeah. Really. I think I'm as good as I'll ever get. Yeah. And then I'm like, oh my God, what will I do? And I could feel it happening to me on the plane, on the plane out here. And I was just like, oh shit. Like, emptiness started to emerge.
Yeah.
And then immediately I thought, like, I need booze.
If you have demons chasing you, I think it's more likely that you're gonna push to the outside limits of extreme fitness. And there's something about the pain and self-torture that somehow makes sense to me. If you have demons chasing you and you go into a fitness thing where you're torturing yourself, that kind of makes sense. It's almost like you're choosing a physical pain that you're in control of instead of an emotional, psychological pain that you're definitely not in control of. And something about the being in the physical pain, I think, kind of like through endorphins or I don't know, adrenaline or something, kind of medicates out or helps push away the psychological pain.
You know what? Sometimes when I'm just like on a normal day before I'm going into the office, I will like subject myself to some kind of strange training. Like I'll run all 34 flights of stairs in my building, and like just straight, and it takes about 5 minutes to do if you run it, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'll like make it hard so that I can only inhale while I'm on the flat parts. Like on the stairs, I have to exhale, and then like this is so stupid now that I'm saying it out loud. But I play these stupid games with myself, trying to make things harder and harder. And in my mind, what I do, I like have a mantra where I say like, I'm building a strong psychology. I'll literally say that to myself. I'm building a strong psychology, because as my body is just like telling me to quit, like, dude, you can just walk the next 6 flights of stairs, and I'm like, no.
Yeah.
The completion
of metaphor. For some reason, when you say you're building a strong psychology, it makes me think of this metaphor of the demons chasing us. It's like you're building up strength, kind of against those demons.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and it's just kind of interesting thing. You're building up physical strength by running upstairs or doing these fitness things. But you're right, there is some psychological strength because you're building up the psychological strength to tolerate intense pain.
Well, if you don't know that you can tolerate this pain, this is what happens to a lot of my anxiety patients, and what becomes the thing that they learn from my office is they learn that with enough conditioning into like, hey, guess what? We're going to learn how to deal with and not only examine what causes this kind of a fear of you freaking out in front of people, having some kind of a panic attack, having some kind of a social anxiety that makes it difficult to speak in front of people. But as you condition yourself to be able to do that and just keep going, keep giving a speech through the fact that you're running out of, or you stumble just the way that I did, right? I paused inappropriately in the middle of that sentence. It's like a lot of people think that, oh no, that's the end of me. I shouldn't keep going. Or I'm talking like I'm out of breath, and it's like, great, fucking do that, right? If you know that you can do that and keep going, it has some kind of a different effect on your presentation. You might actually come off as somebody who's very passionate about what you're saying, really. And so then that anxiety transforms into some kind of a functional aspect in your life. And when people have this revelation, it's like so liberating. It's ultimately liberating, and the only one of the most effective ways, it certainly isn't the only, because we're taught multiple ways to deal with anxiety, but one of my favorites is to condition oneself to tolerate unusual levels of psychic distress.
And that is, I think that what that sentence you just said is a good summary of what you were doing, why you did so well in the Spartan race.
Yeah, it certainly explains the mentality. Remember after when I was like, dude, I feel like connected to the universe, and I could see it in your face. We were both like high.
It felt so good, man.
Yeah, what the hell is that?
Well, that's a good question, and it's part of the reason that people do these extreme fitness things is because there is this extremely good feeling. The uninteresting, ordinary answer is that there's an endorphin release when you like push yourself to some edge. But yeah, there was a sense of being the champion. There was a sense of being connected to some big group, heroic project, and we did a really good job at that.
But then, see, we didn't even know that we did well yet. We had no idea where we scored.
Well, yeah, until we saw the results, we didn't know how well we did. But we still passed like 300 people on the course.
Yeah.
So we knew we had to do pretty fucking well.
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's true.
And really no one passed me. You and that other guy and Rhiannon passed me. But you probably had 0 people pass you.
Yeah, nobody passed me.
No, and I think you passed me and that other guy at the beginning, but nobody else.
No, it's not true. People would pass me periodically. They would they would come up and I would hear them huffing and puffing and trying to like, okay, on your right, and they would pass me. And then very soon we'd get to an obstacle and they would just be like fucking lying around, like holding on sideways, just stuck there doing something weird. And I would just be like, boom, I'm past. I finished every obstacle in like 5 seconds.
Yeah, that is true. People, they'd get this burst of inspiration and pass me, and then like 17 seconds later, I'd pass them and never see them again.
It's like they would see you going and it would turn on something of like, ooh, I gotta beat that guy. And then they would go, ooh, and they would trudge past you. But this is like in the middle of the race, people just became trudgers. And they would,
totally.
Like, I just remember, like, do you remember the sounds coming out of you as you were breathing? Like,
yes.
It was like, I remember just kind of like grunting and getting in, like, huh, yeah,
yeah.
Huh. I would like come off of one of the obstacles and slide off, and I hit the ground, just, huh. That literally what would happen to me.
Yeah, okay, so back to your question of, and so why did we do well? I think it's just what we're saying is that it's
why did you do well, Dave? Like,
why?
Well,
I think that I don't know. I don't know if it's the same or different from you. I did well. I think it's mostly just because of a discipline that I've internalized, and so I have a disciplined weekly routine of diet and exercise, and I've had that for years, so I'm in basically good health. And then that discipline is like, okay, I'm gonna do this race, and if I'm gonna do something, I might as well do a good job. And some experience of pain and discomfort, yeah, it sucks, but it's just not that important. Being in pain is not that big of a deal, so just suppress that and keep pushing yourself to do a good job. It just sort of seems like the thing to do, so fucking, suppress the pain and like do a good job at this.
Yeah, does that transfer into like the regular sense of life, into your relationships,
totally.
into
Yes,
the struggle,
everything.
Right? The struggle
Everything.
of parenting, business, the idea that you're going to freak out that your investments lost $10,000 this hour, and then like isn't this some kind of a strange capacity? And can one cultivate this capacity so that is it like the reduction of anxiety, that as anxiety reduces in one area, it kind of transfers across. Thus, we have generalized anxiety disorder. Anxiety translates to all of your senses of self in the way that this tolerance of the unknown and the scary and the pain translates across. And
yes.
Did we just figure out that it's totally trainable? Is that what we just are deciding?
Well, I think it's trainable, but I do kind of think that you really should train it in kids so that kids have internalized this. Because I think if you go through childhood and adolescence and you haven't learned it, I think it's hard to train it. But yeah, so basically it's self-discipline. It's like doing the right and good thing to do rather than the thing that feels best to do. Rudolf Steiner talks about this cultivating the will in children and how it's important to cultivate will in children. And Rudolf Steiner has this super weird and cool idea of freedom. He says that true freedom is when you can choose to do what you don't want to do. Most people think freedom is, oh, I get to do whatever I want. And Rudolf Steiner is saying freedom is when you can choose to do what you don't want to do because it's the best thing to do for life. I don't want to do it, but I've cultivated the will. I have the self-discipline where I can choose to do what I don't want to do.
That was probably the best synopsis, and that was the best wrap up of this discussion. That was excellent, and that's why I have a picture of Rudolf Steiner right behind me.
Yeah, right over your left shoulder.
Yeah, that's so. I think that really sums it up to some degree. And if we could, as a profession, psychology would maybe be a legitimate practice again if we could deliver this to humanity. If we could somehow lend this, because I hear the exact opposite. People don't want to finish or they don't want to even start their homework or their job until they feel like it.
Totally.
It's like, good. Okay, don't do this race. Like, don't do the obstacle until you feel like it. And there was tons of them just standing there waiting to do the obstacle until they felt like it.
Totally. And that's one of the huge problems with America in this day and age is America thinks, I should only do it if I feel like it. What I feel like doing is very important. And what Rudolf Steiner is saying is, what you feel like doing is utterly unimportant, except that you need to learn how to do the opposite.
Yes. I think that's fantastic. That should be our message.
Let's go.